Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships. As today I'm going to be featuring the Tier 9 American Battleship / Cruiser, the Illinois. So yesterday, actually, normally when I do these upgrade commander build videos, I feature said ship build the day before on Friday, but that wasn't the case for this weekend. But I have several battles I've already played in Illinois, and I'll tag those at the end of this video. And then I'm going to have another video showcasing you a battle highlight of an alternate build that I've done, and I'll talk about here in this video. But in this video, we're going to go over the upgrades, the armor, the modules, the consumables, combat signals, and the commander most importantly, as I've also done two different things with the commanders here with the Illinois. So, in getting right into it, what type of playstyle is the Battleship Illinois? Well, it's kind of interesting because this is something I think newer with what Wargaming is doing, is that they've given us what essentially is a hull to an Iowa, and with improved AA. But rather than the 16-inch guns, she has these 203 millimeter guns. So these are the same guns that you find on Des Moines, Salem, Tulsa, except that you get 12. They're quad turrets, so you have 8 guns on the front and 4 on the back. So you get a cruiser DPM reload time, but on the battleship hull. So it's rather interesting, right? So then, really, when we talk about the playstyle of the ship, a lot of times it can revolve around the armor, it can revolve around the guns in particular, and in this case I'm going to revolve the playstyle around the guns, and that is, I believe, Iowa does best playing the mid-range. So let's say like that 15 to 10 kilometer window, because of having the shell arc, shell travel time. If you're firing these guns at, I think it's like 21 kilometers away, it takes 18 seconds for the shells to fly in travel time. So you can actually get 3 salvos off by the time that the first salvo lands. So at range, you're going to be struggling. So really that 15 to 10 kilometers is really great, because then you're also playing around your concealment. So she's a mid-range battleship. She's not a sniper battleship by any means, and she can only brawl depending on the circumstances and the situation of what enemy ships you're going up to. So she likes to be very selective in her engagements, but definitely playing around the mid-range, utilizing island cover. Kiting also works quite well with Illinois if you have an enemy team pushing a flank, so on and so forth. So, and getting to the armor, you have 32 millimeter bow and stern. You have an armor belt. The casemate armor is a 38 millimeter. Where then it drops down to 32 millimeters, so it's actually a little stronger on the top rather than at the side, rather than a little bit lower here. Deck plating is the 32 until you get to the midsection, 38 millimeter. It's actually quite nice, helping with some high explosive spam, but not a lot. And then of course your superstructure is going to be coated in this 19 millimeter plating, so it's very susceptible to a lot of destroyer HE penetration damage on that. And then looking, stripping some of the armor away to find the hull, or the citadel armor, excuse me. It's actually beneath water lines. So there's actually a little bit of a gap here. You can see water kind of goes a bit above. So you have beneath waterline citadel. And I believe I've played over 35, 40 games now with Illinois. And I think maybe I've been citadeled once. I think. I'm not entirely positive. I might be making that up. But because this citadel is so low, it means it's very hard to citadel Illinois. So I actually brawled with a Georgia, and we were both doing a drive-by on each other. And he didn't even citadel me, and even though he's got those 4 and 57 millimeter guns when we did the drive-by. But I got citadels off on him, because these are Des Moines guns. With the armor on the guns, on the front you get 2 and 3 millimeter to 95 to 51, and then also 51 on the back, and the top is 102. So ideally these turrets really need preventative maintenance on your commander, because they are susceptible to getting knocked out, especially if you're getting like a bow-on engagement against an enemy cruiser battleship. If they're targeting your guns, they're definitely going to knock them out. So I think for a standard build, preventive maintenance is needed, as well as building into main armaments modification 1 and improving your survivability and decreasing the chances of your main battery getting knocked out. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop over to modules. Modules are, there's no upgraded modules to get. When you purchase a ship, you have everything that you need. So you can see with the build we have right now, we have a 7.9 second reload time for these 12, 2, and 3 millimeter guns. 180 degree turn time of 27.6 seconds, which is actually quite nice, and you can even improve that more so if you so desire. Maximum HE shell damage 2,800, maximum AP shell damage 5,000. So when we talk about Des Moines guns on a battleship, and you get 12 of them, I mean, you can do one-shot cruisers who don't respect, and they give you respect you and give you a lot of broadside. I've deleted multiple cruisers that just not paying attention, or they're just not sure what the Illinois is. I had an Akazuki player freak out on me on the enemy team because he's like, what the heck is that reload time you have on your ship? Because I don't think he was actually familiar with the Illinois. So it's still a rather new ship, so not all players are actually getting accustomed to it yet. Hull, 68,100 hit points. I think when you compare it to the Iowa, because I say Iowa Hull, Iowa, actually the Hull gets 79,000. So that's one of the trade-offs here to get this DPM, amongst other things. You can see it's basically the Hull A is what you're getting here on the Illinois in terms of your amount of hit point pool, which I think is fair. I think if they were to give it more health, you know, to bump it up to almost 80,000 is probably, it would be unfair for the Illinois, because in the hands of good players, she's very capable ship. Your gunfire control system. So I've actually gone for a ranged build. So 21.4 kilometers. Now, normally when I tell players that, you know, I'm saying this is a mid-range battleship that you played in the 10-15 kilometer window, I normally won't recommend range, but there's a reason for that. I'll get to it here in a minute. Otherwise, I think it's 18.4, or maybe I'm thinking of Schroeder. You know, we can look. I don't mind. We'll check it out. 18.5. I was 1 kilometer off. So 18.5 so stock, which is actually still works out really well. But there's a reason why I've take that upgrade, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. Propulsion, 33 knots. If you take the ceramic flag, you bump yourself up to 34 knots. And if you take brisk, which is what I've been running as part of my first build option here in Illinois, I think you can get over 37.5 knots. I think I've been up to 37.6 if I remember correctly. So quite nice, very fast in being able to get around and across the map. In terms of her upgrades, for the first slot, I'm going to definitely recommend main armaments modification 1. The risk of your main battery becoming incapacitated is reduced by negative 20%. Your main battery survivability plus 50%, and main battery repair time negative 20%. As I just showed you with the armor on the guns, they're very weak, especially from the side, and you only get the 2 and 3 millimeter armor on the front of the guns. So you really need this. To me, it's a must to have on Illinois. Auxiliary armors modification, you don't need this. Your secondary battery is like meh. And then it's not good. And then your AA, you could build into AA amount survivability, but you'll get matches we don't always have enemy carriers, especially if you get all tier 9 matchmaking. But now we have hybrid battleships, right? So then that kind of goes out the window. Magazine modification, completely risk of your ship's magazine detonating, negative 70%. Just take the Juliet Charlie combat signal, which completely eliminates the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. So out of all this, you definitely want main armaments modification 1. For the second slot, I've taken the damage control system modification 1. This is reducing risk of catching fire by negative 5%, risk of flooding negative 3%. Definitely go for this. I've not had my, I don't think I've had my engine knocked out. No, I take that back. I've had it knocked out once, I think. But I was in an okay position and was able to keep firing on the enemy, and I didn't need to use my damage control party. So I've only had it knocked out once. but you're a battleship, so you don't tend to have your engine or your steering gears knocked out as much as you would on a cruiser, as an example. So take the damage control system modification 1. Now here, there are, what I would say, there's 3 options, okay? I'm going to talk about one of the options more in detail later. So I'm not actually gonna have anything mounted on this slot, but I'll show you. So the build I'm showing you now is the build overall I recommend through and through, which would be taking the artillery plotting modification 1 and extending your main battery firing range, and also you get a little buff to your secondaries. But the reason why I take the main artillery plotting modification 1 is primarily as I don't get aiming systems modification. The American battleships don't get that. To have that improved -7% on your shell dispersion. So then normally what players end up taking, if it's not a secondary battleship, is they take the main battery modification 2, or they take the artillery plotting modification 1. That's kind of the standard here. So like as I was showing you with artillery plotting modification 1, you get up to over 21 kilometers. And this is nice, and I say this because it's frustrating when you have an enemy ship player who's on the verge of dying, and he's running away and no one else is shooting him. Well, when you add this on, you keep firing your 2 and 3 millimeter guns, even though it's going to take a while for your shells to get there. But you have a chance of maybe even causing a fire, or giving him that punishing blow because he's 1 to 3,000 hit points left. So I've actually had that happen 2 to 3 times with Illinois, where I noticed, oh, if I didn't have the range, I wouldn't have been able to get that kill. I wouldn't have been able to knock that player out. So that is why I lean towards artillery plotting modification 1 for myself. This does not mean, hear me out, this does not mean you're playing your ship at 19, 20, 21 kilometers. As I said, Illinois does best in the 15 to 10 kilometer window. Play around her concealment when you have the full concealed build. She's 12.8. So that's where you want to be playing the ship at. The range just gives you the ability to punish players maybe at the earlier as you're getting to your positions. You can take some pot shots at the enemy team as they get to their positions, or if they're running away and you need to get that killing blow, artillery plotting modification 1 comes in handy there. Otherwise, I would say main battery modification 2, which improves your main battery traverse speed by plus 15%. So then you would be getting down, I'll just do it. So we said 27 seconds, 24 seconds. So then that gives you an even better ideal in fill, as I'm just going to sell this. But what I recommend for you to take is the artillery plotting modification 1, and I'll show that equipped here in a minute, but there's something I'm going to do here shortly when I show you the second build. This is really up to you on the 4th slot, okay? So what I've done, because I also have Brisk, I've taken propulsion modification 1. Illinois is a battleship, but her playstyle revolves around her guns, which are cruiser guns, and I use this ship a lot, especially in ranked and randoms, playing around islands. So being able to, if I need to reverse behind an island, like propulsion modification 1 has saved me 2 to 3 times for sure. You know, there's nothing that sucks about being a battleship. You drift out behind the island and you're just sitting there, enemy team's peppering you, and then they kill you before you can actually reverse, get back into cover. Propulsion modification 1 gives you that ability, and it's quite nice. I've really actually enjoyed it a lot here on Illinois. But then I also noticed, because I don't take the damage control system modification 2. Now this reduces your fire extinguishing time and your flooding recovery time by -15%. So this means that I'm burning longer because I've decided to take the propulsion modification 1, which honestly doesn't bother me very much because of your heal. So plus 449, take India Delta, plus 539. So you actually get a pretty sizable, it's not like a standard battleship heal, it's a little bit more than a standard. I think the heal is it similar to Iowa? No, Iowa gets more. But you can see 625. Let me go to Illinois, 539. And I think Minnesota's less. I could be wrong. Well, look, 457, yeah. So you get a little bit better than like a standard heal. So that means I'm able to heal back more fire damage because I have 5 repair parties. So for me, the propulsion modification has won out. just for me in general, okay? And then I'll even show you my stats in the ship so you get a feel for this build even more of how I feel about it. So if you aren't really playing on islands very much at all, then maybe you want damage control system modification 2. But to me, I play this ship similar to how I played Des Moines and Salem to an extent. But particularly utilizing the island covers or just sitting behind an island spamming and no one's targeting you because you're dark and concealed works out as well. This slot, concealment, 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 concealment. This ship works very fantastic around its concealment for the standard build, and which I think is the best build. As I continue to show you this. So it's reducing your ship's detectability range by -10%, squadron detectability range -10%, dispersion of shells by enemies attacking your ship plus 5%. Otherwise, it's torpedo lookout system, and why? I mean, you don't have high acoustic search to even maximize that. Ship consumable modification, extend your action time of just your damage control party and your repair party. No, not really. Concealment, especially because it allows you to play more in that mid-range, as I've been talking about, that 10 to 15 kilometer with these devastating 2 and 3 millimeter guns. Now, I believe there's 2 ways going about this ship, okay? And there's been talk in the community going back and forth. Is main battery modification 3 better, or is artillery plotting room modification 2 better? Okay, I've taken the main battery modification 3 because of my playstyle. Your main battery reload time is reduced by -12%, but your main battery traverse speed takes a nerf -13%. So that means I'm getting that 7.9 second reload time. Now, if you're running Halsey and you get Confederate, as well as your adrenaline rush pumping, I've had, with Confederate and adrenaline rush, I've had 5.7 second reload time down to 5.6, 5.5, I think it was, after I took a little bit more damage. So I like the DPM build. Now, the counter argument people will make with artillery plotting room modification 2 is that your maximum main battery shell dispersion is reduced by -11%. So that your maximum horizontal dispersion and your maximum vertical dispersion are being reduced. So you're more accurate. Your shells are landing more roughly where you're aiming. Sometimes you can fire with Illinois with the build I have, and you're like, what the heck was the far right gun on my first turret, A turret, even aimed at? Like, it just went wide. So if you want to have the greater accuracy, of course, you can run the artillery plotting room modification 2. You can test this out, try it out for yourself. But for myself, because of my playstyle, and I'm playing it somewhat similar to a Des Moines, Salem, I went to DPM because I've been playing actually Illinois a lot in ranked, and in ranked, you're more close quarters combat, that 15 kilometers and less. So I feel the main battery modification 3 favors me a lot with the playstyle of the ship. Otherwise, when I start playing beyond the 15 kilometer range with these guns, the shell travel time is really punishing when it's going to take 13 seconds for your shells to go 16 kilometers. Then you got to really work on your aiming or you're shooting big battleships. So I prefer the main battery modification 3. You may get this ship and you may want to try out the artillery plotting modification 2. You want that greater accuracy. It's up to you. But with 12 guns, especially when you catch a cruiser out broadside with this AP, you're still very likely to death strike them, even if you don't have the artillery plotting room modification 2. The other thing you have is the auxiliary armaments modification 2. Because you have better AA here on the Illinois over the Iowa, so you can see our AA rating is 90. On Illinois, it is 89. So it's briefly better. Do I have the AA combat signal mounted? No. So when I do that, that's going to bump Iowa up to 90. I put it here on Illinois. I actually get bumped up to 92. So you have slightly better AA, and you could build into the AA of Illinois, but I mean, you can even do it with the commander, and we can talk about that. But for myself, the guns are the sweet spot, and you might not always see enemy aircraft carriers or hybrid battleships. Typically, you feel like there's one, whether it's on your team or the enemy team. But I've taken a lot of time talking about that. Okay, so this build with this is what I recommend. For the high explosive shells, you have a 14% chance of starting fires on enemy target. You could bump that up here with the combat signals up to 16%, and then you could even mess with the commander. I think, what is it? What's it called now? Here it is. Demolition Expert. Okay, it is so called that. And you bump it up to 17%. But for myself, it's okay. The high explosive is really nice, and with 12 guns, with a 14% chance, you'll still find yourself regularly starting fires, in my opinion, with the Illinois. Also that you can pin the bows of, let's say you have an Iowa, a Georgia, a Ohio, a Montana pushing in at you. You can actually pin their bows with this high explosive, so it's quite nice. Armor piercing, you get the improved penetration angles. I forget if that's what it's officially called. So same as Des Moines. So it does really well, and especially against light cruisers, heavy cruisers. You can even get some big salvos on broadside Battleship. Just depends on the range and how many shells hit, of course. But the armor piercing is really nice for that 5,000 damage all said and done. You can also see there's a initial velocity difference between the high explosive and the armor piercing. 823 meters a second versus 762 meters a second. Then you also get the depth charge airstrike, which thankfully is 10 kilometers. So I do like that. It's 10 kilometers, not like 5, 6, or 8 kilometers on some of the other American battleships. So 10 kilometers is actually quite nice. So I feel like you're able to contribute a bit more against enemy submarines with your depth charge airstrike versus, like, I think Ohio is like 5 kilometers, I think. Consumable wise, just 2 consumables. Not a lot going on here. You have a damage control party. We have with our commander build, we have a 22-second action time and a reload time of 80 seconds. One of the things I like to run on the Illinois is November Foxtrot combat signal, which reduces our consumable reload time. So now we're to 76 seconds to get our next damage controller party back up. As we talked about the repair party, without India Delta combat signal, it's plus 449, with plus 539. Our consumable action time without one of our commander perks would be 28 seconds, but we built into it, adds 10%, so then 30.8 seconds on the consumable action time. And again, we can take November Foxtrot and get the reload time down to 76 seconds. So I just like to run that, especially because I tend to play more that 15 to 10 kilometer window, so I want my heal and I want my damage control bar to come off cooldown that much quicker. Now, in terms of other things that I run here with the Illinois, with the combat signals, this is what I run pretty standard here on Illinois. Now, if I'm not seeing much any CVs and stuff, then I might give up the November Echo Set 7 and pick up one of the Victor Lima or India X-Ray for that additional 5% chance, so then I'm up to 15%. But standard, this is what I run here. Now with the commander, John Doe is what I'm running on my Vermont. And so I think I might tweak what I end up doing with Vermont with John Doe, so I can run him on both here on my Illinois as well. And it's a build option that I've seen other people run on their Vermont. So one of the things that's very nice about John Doe, or I think the other one's George Doe, is the 2 enhanced skills. So they have the same enhanced skills. One's for coal, 35,000 coal, and then the other's for doubloons, 1,500 doubloons. So definitely, I would say pick up one of those, run them on your Vermont as an example, or Montana. You go up that line, and then also utilize them here on your Illinois. Because most standard battleship builds would be this, and I'll talk about that when we get to the point. But I'm going to go through the skills first here. So for your first point, I would recommend Gunfeeder. With the enhanced skill here, we have main battery shell switching time negative 60%. I think otherwise it's negative 40% because they reshuffled around the percentages. So it means with this ship, you're constantly going to be switching between your high explosive and your armor piercing. So having the enhanced skill is even that much better. You'll be firing on a cruiser who's cutting away, then he decides to go broadside, and then you switch to armor piercing and you wreck him. Grease the gears, because I've taken the main battery modification 3 for that additional reload time, we take that negative 13% nerf on our main battery traverse speed. I'll make that up with the grease the gears. Main battery traverse speed plus 25% versus standard is plus 20%. So for a 3-point commander, this is what I'd recommend. Then for a 6-point commander, I'd then recommend picking up Adrenaline Rush. Nothing like having these 2 and 3mm Des Moines guns reloading that much faster as you lose health and hit points here on your Illinois. Then for the 10-point build, there's 2 options you could go. You could pick up Concealment Expert first, which gets you down to the 12.8 kilometers. Otherwise, you're above 14.2 kilometers concealment, something like that. But having Concealment Expert first helps you get down to 12.8. So that's what you could do for 10-point first, or you could do Fire Prevention. Risk of catching fire, negative 10%. Maximum number of fires, negative 1. So basically, if you're not familiar with what fire prevention does and you're a newer player in the game, let me explain this to you very briefly. Right now, without fire prevention, there would be 4 fires on my ship, 1 on the bow, 1 on the stern, and 2 on the superstructure. Fire prevention reduces not only the negative 10% of catching fire, but it also takes that 4 fires into 3. And so instead of having 2 fires on your superstructure, you only have 1 fire on your superstructure. And most people are targeting your superstructure. And on Illinois, it's sizable. I mean, it's no Georgia, but still pretty sizable. So you're taking less damage. And for me, that really helps since I'm taking propulsion modification in the 4th slot versus the damage control modification 2, I think it is, to have a better reduction time on the fires and floods aboard Illinois. Definitely want fire prevention. So if you're doing a 14-point build, you want these 2 first for the 14-point commander. Then after the 14-point commander, what I'd say is go ahead and pick up Emergency Repair Expert. This is extending your damage control party consumable action time plus 10%. Also your repair party consumable action time by plus 10%. You have an unlimited amount of damage control parties, so the plus 1 doesn't mean anything here. But again, instead of having the 4 repair parties, you get 5 repair parties. And again, I think this is really a must on the Illinois. So definitely pick this up with an 18-point commander. Now, this leaves you with 3 points, okay? So you could do a very standard 21-point build commander here on Illinois, and you could pick up Basics of Survivability. Now, I have been playing Illinois and not taking Basics of Survivability. So actually, I retrained Halsey specifically for Illinois and testing this ship out. And what I've been doing with Halsey on the Illinois is I've been taking Brisk, which increases your ship's speed while she remains undetected, giving me that 37 plus knots here. For a 20-point commander, and then with 21-point commander, I've been taking preventive maintenance. And this is reducing the risk of my main turrets, as well as the steering gears and engine from becoming incapacitated. As I talked about the armor on the gun turrets, especially on the side, what was it, like 56 millimeter on the side? We can check again real quick. 51, right? So very weak armor on the side. So you can end them on the back, of course, because it's very boxy design and your really only angle is really the front. So it's very easy to have these turrets knocked out. And these guns are your bread and butter of the Illinois. So this is a 21-point build I would recommend. And I enjoy it. I think this is a very good build for randoms. It's been a very good build for me in ranked, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So this is what I would recommend first and foremost. And then, you know, if let's say you have a 21-point commander and you don't really want to retrain him just for those last 3 points, you could run with the basic survivability, and I'm sure it would still work out okay for you. But particularly with Vermont, you see a lot of people running Brisk on their commander, and then they're probably like maybe they're doing that instead with their Vermonts. But you could run, you know, John Doe. This is how I'm going to train him up. to be like this. Otherwise, I would have my Vermont Commander as this. So really, it's up to you as the player. So now, because I've hit 30 minutes and I'm trying to be very mindful of my time, I have been testing out an alternative build. I have been going for nothing but all reload, and picking up, or I thought it was called Fearless Brawler. Why do I think it's called Fearless Brawler? I was talking to some people in a random battle, and I was like, yeah, I'm testing out Fearless Brawler. I've been testing out the close quarters combat. Maybe they would change the name of this skill. So let me bring, see, I gotta recall. Let me bring Halsey back onto Illinois, and I'll show you this other build I've been testing out, and I'll actually show you the results too. So I'm bring Halsey back. This is the build I've been testing. Now this is a build, let me be very clear, I do not recommend this build for randoms, okay? But this is a build you can run and ranked. And I'll tell you why here in just a moment. So I'm actually going to put secondary battery modification on here in the third slot. I'm going to explain why am I doing such things, okay? So a few different things we're doing here. Okay, so the philosophy behind this build is that it's all about the reload, okay? Now the close quarters combat increases the main battery reload speed after an enemy ship has been spotted within your ship's secondary battery firing range. Changes to the secondary battery firing range induced by the effect of temporary modifiers and are taken into account, okay? So main battery reload time is negative 10%, and I'm like, I want this. I want to test this out. I want to see, does close quarters combat work well on Illinois? And so to get the most out of this skill means you need to extend your ship's secondary battery range. And so you do that. One is I have to give up Concealment Expert. And then there's kind of the reasons of taking Brisk or Preventive Maintenance go away, particularly Brisk. And then that means picking up long range secondary battery shells, secondary battery firing range plus 20%. And then that also means giving up Artillery Plotting Room Modification 1 or the main battery modification 2 and picking up secondary battery modification 1, which extends your secondary battery firing range by plus 20%, as well as reducing the shell dispersion, and then taking the Mike Yankee Sokasix, I don't know how to pronounce that, plus 5% on your secondary battery range, which means that my secondary battery range for Illinois is 10.5 kilometers, and I've done all of this just to get that additional 10% reduction in my main battery reload time. Now this is a build I've specifically been testing out in ranked. When you're playing ranked, you're playing a lot of more mid-range, so a lot of, I would say more like, you know, easily 16 kilometers and less, with how I would think best to play Illinois because of her guns, very similar to, you know, the same exact guns you find on Des Moines Salem. So it means that you want to be playing in that, as I've been saying, 15-10 kilometer range with Halsey, with Illinois. So I've been testing this out, and let me show you the results of that. So we're in ranked, and I gotta scroll down to Illinois. Okay, so I took a screenshot of my battles played. I think it was at 16 battles played. Okay, my win rate has stayed the same since, although my XP from the first build I showed you, if you took Brisk and Preventive Maintenance and the range, you're not going for Fearless Brawler, my XP earning was in total was just over 2,400. So my XP rating was a little bit better. My destruction ratio at 16 battles played before switching to this build on Halsey was 4.75. Now it's 4.67. The damage to ships I was causing with the previous build with the Brisk was 103,000 average damage per game. And even though I've taken the DPM of trying to activate Fearless Brawler, which I've activated a lot in ranked, it's gone from 103,000 plus to 102,886. But then my potential damage has gone up because I'm giving concealments, which means I'm going to be fired at more. And then my best played battle in ranked was with the previous build. So I've not trumped my previous most damage per battle with the build I'm showing you now. Because it was a what if build to me. Does it make sense to play Illinois in such a way? Now, I've not played Illinois in randoms with this build. So I'll switch back. I'll find Illinois again. So you can see how I've been performing with Illinois. So only 13 battles played with a 69% win rate, with a destruction ratio of 8.33, mind you. Like, this nasty. Like, this is really good for a tier 9 battleship in randoms battles. So that is why I'm going to tell you that the other build is best. Okay? But if you want to go for DPM build, I mean, granted, I have a sample size pool in ranked of 8 battles, you know, from 16 to 24, with the different builds. It's not actually improved my gameplay so far, in terms of my statistically speaking. But I've noticed that, I am often playing ranked where I'm getting more up close and personal. So then this build has actually been nice, I would say, in ranked. But I don't feel the same comfort with this build as I did the build with the Vermont, or what I have with the Vermont commander. Okay, so let me go back to Alaska, pull him back, come back to Illinois, bring over our Vermont commander, then come back here. And I would take a secondary battery array, put an auxiliary plotting room modification 1 on, but I keep spending a lot because I keep switching between the two. And then going for this. This build has given me the most comfort on Illinois, and still having the enhanced skills on John Doe, as like you do on Halsey. But one of the things I like about Halsey is activating the Confederate skill, which I've only done twice so far with Illinois, to go for that maximum DPM build here on the ship. So this video is already getting close to 38 minutes, but I've been playing the ship a lot lately, and I just want to give you my honest thoughts and feedback, and then testing out some different build options. So this would be, I would say, build option number 1. Go for this. Definitely randoms. I do not encourage or recommend the Halsey build that I have right now on Illinois for randoms. I think this build is far superior. In addition to this, would actually even be good as well. And I've done really well in ranked even with having just this build. And then the build of giving up concealment for the close quarters combat, taking long range secondaries, right? So I'm just switching these 2 skills and this skill, has been okay, but I've not gotten the desired results out of like the comfort levels I've had with running this build. So all that said and done, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. If you did appreciate my in-depth analysis on Illinois, please give this video a like. Consider subscribing to the channel if you're not subscribed already. I've done a lot of videos on Illinois talking about, is the ship worth it? Do I recommend it? I do recommend it. I have a separate video that talks about, is it worth it? And I explain how it can be worth it to you and how you can discern that if you are a newer player or you've been playing the game for a while and you're like, is this ship worth 51,000 research bureau points? So I have that in a different video. I'll tag it at the end here. So all that to say, if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you did not, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, as we're getting close to 1,400 subscribers. So really cool stuff, and I'm very appreciative of the support by you, the community. So until next time, take care.